meetings that occur. So if you want to refer back to it, or if somebody, you miss a part of it or what have you, you'll be able to catch the recording. So with that, we are recording, and I'm going to start, again, I've got to continue with a little bit of housekeeping here. I have to read the emergency order that allows us to hold this remotely. So please bear with me as I go through a bit of speed reading here. As chair of the Budget Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note there's no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which is authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I'm confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We're utilizing WebEx for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform. The public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone: 1-408-418-9388 and access code 179-938-2683, or by clicking on the following website address. And I'm not going to read it because it's a very lengthy URL. It's in the public notice and all the meeting information that's been posted throughout the town. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for access to the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for access to the meeting, including how to access the meeting using WebEx or telephonically. Instructions have also been provided on the website of the board, www.pembroke-nh.com. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. Please email acamidge@sau53.org. That's Andy Camidge, acamidge@sau53.org. And D, adjourning the meeting if the public's unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. And we're not going to be taking any votes at this particular meeting. So with that, the purpose of this meeting is to gather input, but it's also, first of all, to provide some input, provide some information to you as the general public here. So we're going to be talking about the town budget as proposed, the school district budget as proposed, and what that all totals and reflects in terms of a tax rate. We'll talk about some of the areas of cost increases and some of those impacts, and give you some background and perspective on that. We'll be referring to a number of documents that, again, these were available at Town Hall and SAU. They're also available on the town website and the SAU website, and we'll be screen sharing those as we talk to them, so you'll be able to see it if you're on a computer. We'll have an overview of the town budget by the town administrator, Dave Joden. We'll have an overview of school budget, the school budget by the SAU business administrator, Amber Wheeler. And then I will review the summary of tax rate and some of the budget committee considerations following that. Once we've done that, once we've provided some information to you and gone through things, we will then open this for public hearing, and that'll be your opportunity to ask questions or provide comment on the budgets as proposed. And once we've given everybody a chance to speak and hear their thoughts, we'll close the public hearing. Following closure of the public hearing, we'll take a quick break, and then the budget committee will meet to do some further deliberation in terms of final, potentially in terms of final recommendations to bring to the annual meetings. So that's how it's going to work this evening. And so with that, let's begin. So again, as I mentioned, the purpose of this is to gather, your input, and the budget committee starts working with the town and school boards back in the September-October timeframe. We start working with them on their budgets. We take a look at the information they provide us. We poke and prod. We give them some feedback. They help us understand, what they're asking for and why. And then we get some detailed draft budgets. And we go through those, we go through all that information, and again, providing some feedback. And at the tail end there, we're able to see what the total impacts of both budgets are on the town and on the tax rate of the town. And that's what I'll go through shortly. And with that, I would like to turn it over to David Joden, town administrator, to overview the town budget and the warrant. David, it is all yours.
All right, thank you. You're probably wondering if my computer was going to work, huh? All right,
Yes.
I'll start out here, and Andy's going to be taking care of the screens for me when we get to that point. Um, First, I want to start out by thanking all the department heads who worked on this budget during the very troublesome times that we all went through this year. It wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy year for everything. So those of you who were at the public hearing last year, you heard me say that several departments were looking at adding personnel in 2021. While several departments saw retirements, no new positions in this, but there are no new positions in this 2021 budget, though the need is still there. In fact, we're still down one body at Public Works through transition and retirement down there. So Andy, if you could put up the first sheet, the summary of the expense, so we can show people, I can kind of go through that. Okay. So everybody should have this screen here, this document. Basically what this is, it shows what the budget was in 2020, line by line, and what the budget is proposed for 2021. It shows the over and under in all the various different lines that are here. You can notice that there are some increases and decreases throughout. The major increases come from the increases to both New Hampshire retirement, which is mandated. The state's changing the rates halfway through the year. And the other increase is coming from the cost for the health insurance increase. All pay increases are tied to the collective bargaining agreement with the Public Works Department. And you'll see that later on here as a warrant article. So the next sheet I kind of wanted to go through with all of you is where all this information goes to next. This is the document that we have to prepare to submit to the state of New Hampshire. And this line shows the same information. It shows what was requested in 21, what was budgeted in 20, and the amount that was also spent in 2020. There are some revenue items that have been taken into consideration for the 2021 budget, which is part of the overall 19-cent increase that you'll see and hear about for the town. For the last 2 years, the state of New Hampshire sent money to city and towns for an item called shared revenue. That amount from Pembroke was well over $100,000. The state is no longer sending that to communities. In addition to this, there are proposed changes to the rooms and meals tax. So I'm estimating about a 30 to 35% reduction in state aid. Rooms and meals, my understanding is they're trying to do some tinkering with that. They're trying on one part to send more money back to the state and get that in, more back to the towns rather, and try to get that into the state's budgets. But I'm not holding out for that. So this budget was prepared with a 30 to 35% reduction in state aid. When finalizing the 2021 budget, the selectmen had to go through this and make some tough decisions, and they took this all into consideration when coming up with the final proposed budget. Now, Andy, if you can put up the warrant articles, I can explain those a little bit. This right here actually is a copy. Well, the preceding slide was a copy of a detailed line-by-line budget. So if anybody wanted to look at that, that ties into the state form. So there's some new funding mechanism here in the 2021 budget on some of these warrant articles. The first thing that you're going to see is the operating budget. The Department of Revenue Administration recommends that we put this article first and get this one done because this could come into the 10% rule later on down the line. So this $8.7 million includes not only the town budget, it includes the water budget, and it also includes the sewer budget. Water and sewer are based on user fees, not taxes. The other items that are in here also as part of that 8.7 is the ambulance budget and the library budget, which are governed by separate boards and commissions. So the first warrant article there, Article 4, that is the collective bargaining agreement with the Public Works employees. We've been going through this since probably July, August, going through the negotiations with this, and we finally wrapped it up probably sometime last week. There's no real major changes on this as compared to the prior year contracts. This contract will be going out into the year 2024. The first year that we'll have to raise and appropriate money will be for the $7,310. Can you move that up a little, Andy? Thank you. So Article 5, this is an article that you've seen every single year if you've been to town meeting. This is where the town puts money into your capital reserve funds. There's a little bit of a wrinkle this year to this. A lot of people ask, how can the town keep the town portion of the tax rate stable over the years? So I can tell you this article right here is one of the major reasons why. When you set funds aside for repairs and purchases, you're able to stabilize the tax rate over a period of time and set aside money to do repairs and major infrastructure repairs. So I can tell you also, too, as a former auditor, this program that Pembroke has is probably one of the best ones that I've ever seen. It allows for that flexibility and to keep the tax rate level. So this article is going to be funded a little bit different than last year. Last year, if you were at the public hearing, you heard, or at town meeting, you heard communications about litigation that the town was involved in. The town had a court case that they won that if we would have lost, it could have been some substantial funds that would have had to been paid out. The town won that. So this year, the funds that were set aside for that are getting applied to pay for the money going into the capital reserve. So this $610,000 that we're putting in to capital reserve will not have any impact on the tax rate whatsoever, because this is money we had set aside. If you go to the next line, also the Article 6, that's to purchase a new split body trash truck. This is what we currently operate right now, and the funding for this will be handled the same way through surplus funds. So this too will not impact taxes. It will come out of the reserves that we have and be paid for in cash. Now, we currently have 2 trucks. One of them is the very, very first one that we ever bought in this town back to 2010. That truck is ready to be put out. There's major repairs that we need. We've been having to use the newer truck a lot more than we had hoped for. That one too is starting to cause some problems. Even though the truck is only 5 or 6 years old, the new one we have, everybody needs to understand how many times every single week that truck arm goes up and down to pick up trash carts. That's a lot of wear and tear on that vehicle. And we're looking to replace that one so we can get that one taken care of, trade in the oldest one from 2010 and put the other one that we have as a backup and continue to run them when we need to as a dual purpose, when we have holidays, things like that we have to do a double run. Also, with the article for the trash truck, everybody should know that currently within our operating budget, the amount of money we pay for tonnage is an extremely favorable amount. There is no other community probably out there that's paying what we do. We entered into a 10-year contract years ago. It's due to expire, unfortunately, in 2 more years. When it does, we will see probably the rates double from our $63 per ton rate, well over probably $100 a ton. The Solid Waste Committee is currently working on that. They're coming up looking at all kinds of different options. Those will all come forward. They'll be presented to the Board of Selectmen in future meetings. We're working with Casella, some of the other haulers, changing some things around in the solid waste ordinance to make things a little bit easier. So we're hoping that it works out well when we actually put it out for bid to see what we get for contracted numbers. Article 7 is requesting to take money out of the capital reserve funds. Again, no taxes are affected here on the tax rate. We'll be taking the money out of there. What we're looking at doing, this is part of the capital improvement plan. Public Works is looking to purchase a new 1-ton truck with accessories. The current 1-ton that we have is still good mechanically, body-wise, but the rear portion of it where the sander outfit is no longer usable. So the goal with this is to take that off, keep the truck, and then trade in the service truck that we have that is rusted, the drivetrain's not good, trade that in towards this new truck. And then you see in Article 8, looking to purchase, again, taking money out of capital reserve with no impact to the taxes to buy a new box truck to put on the older 1-ton truck that we have. So this is all goes through the capital improvement program. It graded out and rated very high on capital improvements. They thought it was a good idea. It was a way to save some money and keep a vehicle that's still working in good condition. Article 9 is an article that's not a monetary article. All this is they're looking to get the authority to change the way that it's currently set up. You need town meeting approval to withdraw money from this account. This will allow the selectmen to be agents to expend. And the board is looking at doing this because when sidewalk projects come up, it's usually in the warmer weather, and there are times where you could potentially need some matching funds through grants and things like that. This will give the selectmen the opportunity, if that comes up, the opportunity to take the funds out of there without having to wait to go to town meeting. Petition warrant article came in. It's not a monetary article. You don't see it here because it came in just the other day. It was the same article that was there last year about the carbon footprint. So you'll see that on the final warrant that gets posted, and that will end up in the town meeting booklet. That's kind of all I have right now. So I'm done.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Just about right there. Amber, I will turn it over to you. So Amber Wheeler is the budget administrator, financial administrator for the school district.
Yes, good evening. So on the website, as you mentioned earlier, there are some documents on there. So I just want to kind of go over briefly before we start discussing what our budget looks like. So on the websites, you should be able to find a draft warrant. You should also be able to find a summary of those warrant articles. We summarize those to get a better idea of what each of those actually mean. We have a budget hearing packet that includes the MS 27, which is very similar to David's report that he showed earlier. We also have a budget summary that I put together, a revenue summary that I put together, a budget that is line by line that also includes detail throughout the budget, as well as the tax impact sheet that the town provides, that we put together as a team and provide to the public. So those are the documents that you can find on the website. This evening, we're going to go through the budget summary and the revenue summary, as well as the warrant articles. So to start off, basically what the school board's approach, as well as administration, it was our strong focus on educational mission. We wanted to make sure that we had precautions for safety and health for our students and our building, especially with this year. It's been challenging for everybody. And then we also wanted to be sure to be sensitive to the bottom line. We know it's really important to the community. It's really important to the school, administrators, teachers, everyone involved. And we worked really, really hard to try to provide a budget that we thought meant a lot, enabled us to be able to provide adequate education for our students. So the overall budget that we're presenting is $27,474,679, which is $224,574 higher than the voted current budget for 2021, which is an increase of 0.82%. So what does that mean? So the administration and the school board's goal was to provide the community, as I mentioned, with a reasonable budget. So we really look through each individual line to say, okay, what do we absolutely need? We always start our budgets from a zero-based budget. We don't copy what was there last year and move it forward to the following year. We literally look at line by line to say, okay, what do we need in order to sufficiently educate our students? And with that said, we were able to make some significant cuts throughout, as well as keep lines either flat or a minimal increase. So some of the increase were special education. We've got increases of about $342,000 Those are mandated. We have to provide those services. As you know, we talk about that every year. As well as there's some industrial technology programs we'd like to include some extra dollars for those. That was approximately 1,900, about 2,000. We had some guidance services, health services, improvement to instruction and media services that were an increase of about 40,000. School board and SAU services, that's an increase of about approximately 23,000. We had some maintenance and ground personnel. The increase in those sections, which are the 2,600 sections throughout the budget, we had a slight increase of 5,800. We have some in transportation of approximately 58,000. Those are due to contractual obligations that we have. We are currently in a 5-year contract. Next year will be the 5th year of that contract. So we will, over the next several months, be going back out to bid for 22-23, right? 22-23. So that will be presented next year when we do the budget next year. We also have some required services for special education that we have to provide. So those dollars are included. Some of the big increases that we really saw throughout this, again, that we had no control over were health benefits. You know, we had some increases there. We are seeing a range of increase between 6.4 and 7.2, depending on which plan the employee selected. Again, as we've done last year, for this current year, and we are going to do again next year, we are going back out to bid. We've already solicited bids from some companies. I know our HR director is currently working on that. So we're hoping to be able to refine that number for next year. But as of right now, this would be the highest, and in hopes of coming in a little bit less. But we have to make sure that whatever plan we move to is an apples to apples, specifically because of our collective bargaining units. The big change that's going to hit next year, this does not affect the current budget, but it will affect next year's budget, is the New Hampshire retirement system. So certified staff are going from 17.8 to 21.02, which is significant. The non-certified staff is also increasing. Their rate is increasing from 11.07 to 14.06. So their increases, they have equated to approximately $128,000. We also have a transfer to food service, which is $50,000, much higher than previous years. Usually it's anywhere, the increase for the transfer could be anywhere from, $0 to 7, 8, 9, 10,000. Next year's a little bit different. And the reason for that being is because the food service works differently than the operating budget. Any surplus that they have is much like the town, where they get to keep that surplus. And so over this last several years, the food service program had really done a great job in finding creative ways to bring in some revenue. And they still do that. We just have some change in services. There's some increase in cost. Especially with this year, obviously we have some different standards that we had to put in place with all the with the coronavirus. So those are playing a role in this. But the big difference is last year, when we ended the fiscal year, we ate away at that surplus a bit. We are estimating that this current fiscal year, we're going to eat away again at some more of that surplus in order for us to net to zero. Next year, there's not a significant amount to offset their budget. And by law, any amount that is not covered, that we do not bring in enough revenue, we have to cover through the operating budget. So that's why there's a significant increase in this budget. With that said, when we went back and really took a look at our budget, we were able to make approximately $50,000 worth of cuts. So that number actually is a lot less than what it was. It was more around the 70, 80,000 increase. So we really tried to take a look at all avenues of our budget. We have an increase in the charter school of 18,316. That's the Pace Academy. That's due to increase in enrollment. We are anticipating an increase of about $35,000 worth of grants. So we are anticipating some extra revenue there, which means the reason why we have it in the operating budget is because the revenue and the expenditures net each other out to make zero. So we have to budget for the expense and then the revenue will offset it. In the anticipated food service increase, as I mentioned before, that one is 73,000. That's the overall budget is going to increase by that amount. We've had no FTE changes throughout this budget, no additional, I should say. So we haven't added any positions. With all of the actual increases throughout the budget, the total increases in the budget were actually $791,548. So that was a significant amount of increases that we had that were really out of our control for the majority of them. So what we needed to do is we really needed to look at where can we make some cuts. So administration went back, really took a look at the budget and said, what areas can we cut that we can still provide an adequate education and really plan a little bit differently this year to cover, as we've discussed at some of the school board meetings. And they worked really hard to come up with basically the amount that they were able to reduce with some cuts from the very beginning when we first proposed, and then some cuts we made a couple weeks ago. We were able to come up with $454,474. Sorry, I just need some water, 1 second. I did want to note that I think it's important that in this proposed budget, while we've also made these cuts, there are some significant amounts of money that are in here. And one of them has to do with the teacher CBA that was voted on last year in 2020. So that in itself was passed last year for $420,000. So I just wanted to note that that is included. So the total Fund 1 budget increase is 0.44 prior to the food service and grants. The total appropriation, when you include the food service and the grants, as I mentioned in the beginning, is an increase of 0.82%. So that includes the food service, anticipated grants, as well as all of the items that we believe we need in order to provide an education for the students. Again, though, the food service and grants are offset by revenues. So now I'll go over the revenue a bit. And so our revenue, we're estimating revenue to be about $14,810,184. This includes state aid, federal aid, tuition, any fees that are assessed, food service, as well as any proposed warrant articles. So if we had any articles for trust funds, those would also be included. So some of the state sources, the biggest one that we are seeing, as we've talked about year after year, this amount of money is basically on a roller coaster. We were very fortunate in this current biennium to receive some additional funding. While it was great for us in this current biennium, it is a significant drop in revenue for next year. So we're looking at some of the two areas that we received aid was for free and reduced lunch, as well as what they call fiscal disparity aid. So for next year, we unfortunately are going to lose approximately $880,000 just in that area alone. With that said, I know that there's some legislation out there trying to be able to provide some additional funding moving forward. But as of right now, I can only speak to what's happening and what we are told at this point in time. And right now we are to be short about $880,000. due to this reduction in state aid. We do have an increase in the state educational tax funding of approximately $20,000. We're seeing a slight increase in building aid of approximately $5,000. We estimate an increase in catastrophic aid, which is due to student-specific need. That is approximately $26,000. That number can fluctuate. It all depends on, we currently go off of what the current students we have, as well as what students we know will be through the system next year. But with that said, students could come and go. Students could have some changes that may no longer require services, or vice versa, where they didn't require services, but now they do. So that, that's an estimation. We have a slight increase in the child nutrition of about $11,000. And then for the local revenue, we have the high school tuition, which obviously plays a very significant role in our revenue sources. And so for the high school tuition, we have an increase of enrollment actually estimated for next year. We also have increased the tuition rate. We based our determination for tuition off of 91% of our enrollment, which is approximately 286,000. The current area roster shows about 423 students, and we're going to utilize 385 students, which is a difference of 38 students. Why do we do that? We do that because we are estimating a significant amount of time ahead. Really, it's anywhere, 14, 16 months. I don't have to think about just who's going to show up in September. I got to think about who's going to be there in June, that following June, which is basically you need a crystal ball. We did come very, very close. We actually hit it head on this year with our number. I have used a variety of tools to really help me with that analytical data, which I think has really been working. Conservative, just in case we have a large amount of students that may move, and we believe that this would be sufficient. Currently, our total roster for Pembroke is 770, and we will budget for 698 students. So that's a 72 student difference. So that includes the area students, that includes the non-area students, such as students from Hooksett, as an example, as well as students actually from the Pembroke community. The estimated tuition rate increase is $819.72. So the current rate for this fiscal year is $13,164. Next year, we are estimating the tuition rate to be $13,884. So there is an increase there. We are estimating a reduction in some other fees for classes, approximately $83,000. We're estimating an increase in some lunch sales, approximately $143,000. Not because we anticipate that more students are going to partake in lunch, but if you compare it to what the current year is, and even the spring of last year, it really throws that analytical number off because of COVID. Because we were not in the building in the spring, and we've been in and out of the building throughout this fiscal year, those numbers are very difficult to estimate for. So when I estimated for tax rate setting for this current year, I estimated conservatively. But when I did that, it makes it look like next year we're budgeting a significant amount more, when we're really not. If you were to look at the trend over the last several years, it is more in line. I just had to make sure that we try to treat next year as if we hopefully are back to some normalcy. The total reduction in the estimated revenue is $354,034. When you look at the estimated revenue sheet, it looks like there's a large amount. It looks like it's over $1 million. We're not sure over $1 million. Because we have to take into consideration the surplus that we sent back last year. to offset taxes in any of the warrant articles that we also had passed. So those have to take into consideration. So when you look at those, the shortfall of revenue for next year that we're estimating is $354,034. And that's what I have for the summary for the budget and the revenue. Again, you can look at the individual district school budget, gives line by line detail, as well as our MS-27, which breaks it up through the account codes.
Thanks, Amber. This is Andy Camage, Pembroke School Board Chair and also a member of the Municipal Budget Committee. I'm going to go through the school's warrant articles, a little bit of a summary here. Article 2 is the basic funding for all of our operations. I think you guys can see this on the screen now. I'm going to try not to read word for word, but I think you can get the gist here. So a lot of these numbers are the ones that Amber just shared. So I don't need to go through Article 2 very closely, but it's simply funding the numbers that Amber just talked about. That includes the teacher contractual raises that were voted in last year with the new CBA, as well as the increases in retirement and health insurance. And again, all of the stuff that Amber just said is wrapped up in Article 2. Warrant Article number 3 is for a new collective bargaining agreement. The board has been in negotiations with the paraprofessional staff. So they have unionized into an organization called the Pembroke Support Staff Association, and we've reached an agreement with them for a 3-year collective bargaining agreement as well. So Article 3 shows the number and the cost of that both next year and for the 2 years following. Article 5 is for the School Building Capital Reserve Fund, and we're looking to put a moderate amount, to withdraw a moderate amount from that fund for replacement of some fire life safety items at PA and at Three Rivers, which are mostly sprinkler heads and other fire systems. Article number 6 is intended to set up a new trust fund. We have historically used funds from a trust to purchase our vehicles. And it was at the recommendation of the town that we set up a specific trust fund just for vehicle expenditures. So this warrant article would create that fund. It would also raise $20,000 directly from taxes to deposit into that fund. And lastly, it would make the school board agents to expend that fund. So to put some of this in perspective, for the most part, we're talking about 4 vehicles here. The school has, I believe, 1 van, 1 truck, 1 large tractor, and 1 smaller tractor. So that's kind of, those are the vehicles that we're talking about in this fund that would be replaced from this money. The reason that we chose to select the board as the agents to expend rather than the voters is if a truck, similar to what David mentioned when he was talking about the sidewalks, where they have an article to switch the agents to expend from the town meeting to the select board, because when there's sidewalk issues, they need to be taken care of. That's kind of our reasoning here as well. Because we have 1 pickup truck, we don't have a backup pickup truck. The feeling is if the town is the agents to expend, we would not be able to replace that truck until after a new warrant article at the following year's town meeting, or school district meeting rather, to pass before we'd be able to do that. So that could potentially be over a year that we would be without a truck. So that's why we chose to ask that the school board be agents to expend. That being said, if we were going to expend that money, we would hold a public hearing first to explain why we were doing that and get input from the public. Article number 7 is to put more money into that same fund. The difference is the money from Article 7 would come from the surplus. So I think most of us are aware of how that works at the end of the fiscal year, which would be, for this discussion, June of 2022. whatever money is left over at the end of the year would fund these warrant articles that are to specifically come from surplus. So I believe it's 35,000. I don't have the number in front of me. 35,000 of that surplus would get put into that vehicle expendable trust fund that we set up in Article 6. And I think that's it for the school warrant. So Mark, I think that's it for us.
All right, thank you, Andy. If you could bring up the tax sheet, then I will walk us through that and see what the overall impact of both these budgets look like. For those of you that have been in town for a while, you've certainly seen this format. We've been using it. It's got to be well over 15 years at this point. This is actually a working document for the budget committee that allows us to kind of see and put things in perspective and get some history. But it ends up being a good mechanism for us to talk to you as well. So let me start from the top and work our way down. The upper left-hand corner is the assessed value of property in the town. So as you can see that for 2021, we have, David has not determined that there would be any increase in total assessed property value here in town. So that amount remains flat at $770,768,044. David takes a very fair and realistic and safely conservative approach with that, and he's proven pretty good at that over the years. In the upper right, New Hampshire State Education grants, and we heard from Amber a few moments ago that the grant for award for 21-22 has been reduced by $880,000+, and you can see that reflected there. And that does have a big impact on the bottom line when we get there. And you can see, looking back, the ups and downs, the big jump in 2021 from that special allocation that Amber referenced. The next segment is the operating budget. These are the basic expenses of operating the town and the school. These are all the expenses in the budgets, excluding warrant articles. So any of the warrant articles that you saw referenced are not included in this operating budget. We put this here to help give a sense of how are sort of the steady state expenses flowing year to year. So you can see that both for the town and the school. Then we get into the lower part here, which basically is the full budget, including capital expenditures. It's all the warrant articles as well. So it's the operating budget plus the warrant articles for the town and the school. And there's basically 4 vertical columns. The first set of columns covers the school. Next is the town, followed by the county, which we have no control over whatsoever, and then the totals. Okay. So the first row is appropriations. So that's the operating budget plus the warrant articles. So you can see for 20 and the color coding here, if you're able to see this in color, the pound sign 2021 is the amounts that are recommended or being requested by the town and school boards. The right arrow, the 2021, the dark black, is the budget committee's current working recommendation. So you can see that the numbers agree between boards and the budget committee. For in terms of appropriations in the school side, that reflects a $391,000 increase. And on the town side, the total reflects a $402,000 increase. Overall, that's a 1.1% change in appropriations. The county numbers are going to go down just a tick. We believe the county numbers are going to go down just a tick. And I should also note that, all of this really, particularly when you start dealing with revenues and everything else, it's estimates. It's the best we can do, right? So that we don't have crystal balls. We can't be, as Amber said, she can't predict how many students are going to show up at PA, next June or what have you. So all of this is the best working estimate. The next row covers revenues. And again, The big change here is the $1 million reduction roughly in revenues for the school systems, 880,000 of which reflects that reduction in state education grant money. So the net here is a 3.8% reduction in overall revenues between school and town. That reflects $787,000. So the net amount to be raised by taxes, bottom line, so you take appropriations minus revenues equals net amount to be raised by taxes, which comes out to $12,831,670, reflecting 12.5% on the school side. On the town, it's $4,378,905, reflecting a 3.6% change. The county drops a tick. So the total net amount to be raised by taxes would be $19,104 for a 6.7% increase. So then we go to the actual tax rate itself, and that's the very bottom line. So that's the dollar rate per 1,000 value of property. So with the current numbers that we're working with, the school portion would be $16.65, the local school, our school contribution. For the state, it's $1.83. That's unchanged. That is that's up also from last year. For the town, it'd be $5.68, up 3.6%. The county, $2.47, drops a couple pennies, unfortunately not more. So the total rate would be $26.63, reflecting an 8.3% increase. So that's how the numbers from the budget requests from the town and the school total and translate into a tax rate. And so that's what we're here to get some input and some feedback on. So with that, we're going to get ready to open the public hearing, but I've got a couple of ground rules first to talk about. So first of all, questions and comments are going to come through me, and then I'm going to work with David and Andy and Amber and whoever else is needed to get any questions answered. Or if you just have comments, we will be noting those. I'd ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. We don't have a huge number of people on board, so I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of trouble with that. But I would like to, ensure we give everybody a chance. Before, when you are recognized to speak, and we will recognize you, so don't just jump in. We will recognize you to speak. Please state your name and the street you live on, because we've got to have that. If I don't hear it clearly, or if I get a signal from our recording secretary that we don't hear that clearly, I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to be rude and interrupt and ask you to repeat that. We've got to have that. We'll start. We're going to go through and work with people that are in the WebEx section here, and Andy's going to talk about how to do that in a moment. We're going to work through the folks on the computers first, and then we've got a couple of folks here on phone lines. We will give you a chance to ask any questions or provide any comments after we've gone through the computer folks. Your approach, we got to work with you a little bit differently because of the muting mechanism. So Andy, if you want to give your little spiel here on how this all works.
Sure, thanks, Mark. So if you have joined any of the school board meetings since in the past year, you're familiar with how this works. It's going to work similarly to our public comment sections. So somewhere on your screen, if you're joined on the computer, you should be able to find a raise hand button. Depending on what kind of computer you're using and what kind of client you're using, it may be in a slightly different place, but you should be able to look around and find that. If you would like to participate and comment or ask a question, just go ahead and hit that raise hand button. When that happens, you'll come to the top of the screen for me. And I think Mark can see that as well. He will recognize you, and at that point, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and then go ahead and speak. Please remember to lower your hand after you speak so that we know that you don't have another question. Please remember to mute yourself afterwards. If not, I will try to do it myself. And then, as Mark said, at the end, we will check in with folks that have called in, and that's a little bit different process. Basically, I'll ask if anybody on the phone would like to contribute, and if you hit *6 on your phone, it should unmute you. Go ahead and state your name. I'll let Mark recognize somebody, and then we'll kind of go from there. So that's kind of how it works. And if anybody has technical questions, you can ask them, and one of us can try to answer them the best we can.
Thank you, Andy. And with that, I will formally open the public hearing. So if you have a question or a comment, please use the raise hand feature. And I will recognize Sarah Petersons.
Good evening. This is actually Matt Petersons. I'm just using my wife's account of 48 Bow Lane in Pembroke. And I just had a question regarding the paving and the capital outlay. Perhaps I'm looking at the wrong area, but I did wonder where just like improvements to roadways and paving and those type of things, do those all fall under the paving line? And if someone could just outline what the details are for the paving plans for next year.
David, would you like to run with that one?
The paving comes under, similar to the crack sealing, it all comes under the capital outlay section of the budget. Normally what we do is we still have a bond payment that is out there for the Pembroke Hill project. We usually have $600,000 every single year to do paving projects. This year we're paying off the bond for a little over $300,000, and the remaining balance, about $290-something thousand, will go to paving projects. The roads committee, I'm not sure if the roads committee has actually finalized the listing of roads yet. I know it's getting ready to go out to bid. I do see Paulette on the screen here as a attendee with her, and she's on the roads committee. Maybe she can answer. Maybe she's got the actual list in front of her, but I don't have the list. I know we encumbered some money to carry over to do some completions of projects too that we had postponed due to COVID, but I don't have the actual list in front of me, no.
Paulette, if you'd like to jump in, if you've got that information, please do.
I don't have that information in front of me.
Okay. Perhaps will that be available on as part of committee meeting minutes or road committee meeting minutes once it's finalized?
Yeah, that should all be part of the minutes.
Okay. So that'll be a source for that. Do you have an estimate of when you will be finalizing that information?
Usually by the April 1st Tuesday in April should be finalized.
Okay. So that'll be the target then for checking minutes in that April timeframe to see what roads have been selected. And hopefully that takes care of the question. Andy.
Thanks, Mark. Just wanted to point out one thing on the tax impact sheet. If you've watched any of the NBC meetings, you've heard me say it a million times, probably last year at the meeting too, and you'll hear me again at this year's meeting. As Mark said, this is the best that we can do right now, and it is an estimate. And one of the big things that I think everybody should be aware of is that currently the school district has a very healthy surplus to the tune of around $900,000. Any of that money that's not spent by June 30th would fund approved warrant articles from last year, and then what's left after that would be returned to offset taxes. The reason I'm telling you this is because if that is, in fact, a large chunk of money, and I expect that it will be, then that 8.3%, which is the bottom line number on the tax impact sheet, would be reduced accordingly. Nobody can tell you what that's going to be. I can't tell you how much we're going to return or how much or how little we're going to return. For a quick example, last year, I believe the increase percentage on the tax impact sheet going into the meeting was 10.6%, I think. And after year end was closed, and we can look back now and see what the exact number was, and it's actually on the tax impact sheet we had on the screen earlier, the actual increase for 2020 was 4.3%. So certainly cannot guarantee that it will be that dramatic of a downshift. But again, it is an estimate, and I would expect that 8.3 number will be reduced somewhat significantly.
And to Andy's point here, because that information won't be known until the books are closed at the end of June, I believe it is. We can't represent any of that information really for sure in the tax sheet. But it may well have a fairly significant effect on the actual final values of tax rates. So again, I will call for questions or comments using the raise your hand feature. Mark Dumont.
Hi, guys. This question's, I guess, for Andy. It's about the revenues.
Excuse me, Mark, before you, we know your name, obviously. Can you give us your street, please?
Oh, yeah, Donna Drive.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. The loss in revenues that we're going to have this year, I think you've already explained it before, but if you could just explain it again, I kind of got sidetracked when you were talking about that. I think you said that we're getting less money from the state for certain things, and I wanted to know if that was all the loss in revenues, or if we're going to be expecting less students, or if you could go a little bit more into that for me, please. Thank you.
Amber, sounds like that one's in your court.
Sure, I can take that. So the loss of revenue is from the adequacy aid. Really, that's the biggest sum that we're going to lose from. We are not estimating, as I mentioned a little earlier, a decrease in enrollment. So actually tuition, we are anticipating receiving more, not less. So really the big piece that we'd be losing revenue would be just mostly the adequacy aid. And that was due to this biennium budget. We were, as well as every school district through the state of New Hampshire, were awarded additional funding for free and reduced lunch, as well as what they call disparity aid. And those were one time. So we received them in 1920, we received them in 2021, this current fiscal year. Once this biennium budget is over, those funds no longer exist. They do not carry forward. So that's in the loss of revenue. And I know that they're working on trying to get some of that back. Whether that's going to happen, we're not sure yet. We hope so. We're hoping to get back at least some of that. But as of this time, we can only estimate what we are aware of.
Amber.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments? Please raise your hand. Okay, I see somebody raising their hand. We're usually looking for it over on the side, but Dick Bean, go right ahead. You are still on mute, I believe.
So I just unmuted myself. So I have a couple of questions, if I may ask. So I think Andy answered the question on the truck, because there's $1 million, I think, in the, trying to write my notes here, $1 million that we had in savings. And why wouldn't that be taken out of the savings that we have, $1 million? The other question I had, I've been taking a ton of notes here, is what's the average number of students in K through 8, if you could? By the way, Andy, you're doing a great job, I must tell you. So, and could you update the status of the audit for the school appropriations budget? And Amber, I was thinking, again, I was trying to create notes. Amber was saying only 1.8% increase when a tax sheet showed an 11.2 increase. So are those right numbers? Thank you very much.
Andy, do you want to start off on that?
Sure, I'll hit some and then I can ask Amber to fill in the gaps. I think I got some of your stuff written down, Dick, but you might have to remind me of a couple of those questions.
There's no problem.
I don't have the K through 8 numbers in front of me. I know that a budget committee member brought that to us last time and gave us a number in around 16 students per classroom. I can't verify that for sure, and I don't have it in front of me, but I would think that's pretty accurate. The audit, I would have to defer to Amber. And what were the other ones?
So the other answer was on the audit. Let me pull this up on me. I'm scrolling down here. So Amber was saying only 1.8% increase with a tax sheet showing a 11.2%.
Okay. So yeah, here, actually, Mark, do you mind if I share that tax sheet one more time?
Right ahead.
Sure, that's great.
And Dick, if you could mute if you're not talking, that will get rid of the background noise.
Here we go. That a second, I think. Okay. So as Mark kind of explained, there's a lot of different numbers on this sheet. So when Amber was talking about the 1.4, she's talking about the appropriations. So that's the money that we're saying we need this amount. Oh, somebody's not muted. I got to kill that or I'm not going to be able to hear myself. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. So the appropriations number, I don't know if you can actually see my cursor or not, but the top left box for appropriations, the appropriations are the number that we say, these are the dollars that we need to provide an adequate education as we think is best. So that number is up 1.4, and I believe that's actually, in our summary, it had 0.86, so I'm not sure exactly what the difference is there, which one is more current. But either way, very small increase. If you look at the net amount to be raised by taxes, that may be the other number that you're talking about. That shows 11.3 on the sheet. So obviously, that's how much the taxpayers have to chip in to make that top number happen. And the reason that it's only a little bit increase of what we need to run the schools, but it's a significant increase on what the taxpayers need to chip in to make that happen, goes back to the short in revenue. So even though we're only asking for $200,000 or whatever more than we asked for last year, because we're getting $880,000 and change less from the state, then unfortunately the taxpayers have to make up that difference. And as Amber alluded to, that's going to be the case in pretty much every town in the state, because every school in the state, because every school was awarded some of that money for the past 2 years, or this year and last year, and they won't get it next year. So I hope that answered that.
May I provide a little more clarification?
Please.
So the 0.82 that I talked about was budget appropriation, as Andy just mentioned. So this particular sheet, if you're looking at the way bottom, it takes into consideration, as Andy said, the budget and the revenue. But that 1.4 that's in the beginning there for budget appropriation, that includes the warrant articles as well. So that 0.82 that I talked about was strictly budget appropriation, no warrant articles. So that's where the difference from the 0.82 and the 1.4 comes into play.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, and as in the audit, so we have hired a new auditor. The auditor that we had previously was not able to keep up with us. So we have hired a new auditor. They have already started. They are actually almost done a couple of our districts for a full year. I believe they're looking to get through because we have been behind for quite some time. Since I came on almost 6 years ago, they were behind. I think it was a year and a half then. So we hired a new auditor, and that auditor was having a hard time keeping up as well, because it is a lot, because we really are 6 entities, because we have the SAU plus the other 5. And so we hired a new auditor that started this, where are we at? I guess this fall, and not even the winter fall time frame, started, and they are just about done 18-19 for a couple of our districts, and they're going to roll right into 19-20 as soon as they're done those. So hopefully we can get caught up. I know they are adding additional staffing to get us to where we need to be. So we are rolling along in that.
All right. Ann Bond, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate your time. I just wanted to say thank you to David for working with all of the directors that we needed to keep the budget tight. But I did want to mention also the selectmen did go out and get additional information for the health insurance, because that was an increase. And we weren't able to, come in with a different product and still saving the town's, excuse me, still saving the taxpayers. So I just wanted to mention that, we did entertain other insurance, health insurance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Dan, you're up.
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Dan Crean, Eastview Drive. I'm not on the budget committee this year for a number of reasons, but I've followed budgeting quite a while in town. And my first question concerns the solid waste. Every year since we've started the recycling truck, we've spent a ton of money, and I understand we need to, but I think at this point, it may be time to revisit the question of contracting out. And, every few years, it seems we're putting several $100,000 into a new truck or into replacement parts on the truck. That's a lot of money. And I think it may be time to look at contracting out. It may or may not save money, but I think it's at least worth looking at. I don't know if we've done that or not, but I would suggest doing it. On the school, I appreciate the difficulties that the school's going through. But at the same time, I'm looking, I appreciate the fact that it looks like there are no new positions being added, but the SAU is adding somebody else to do something regarding attendance or bookkeeping or something like that. And, I know we can't control the SAU budget on the town level because the other towns have not voted to make their budget reviewable and approvable by the town. I'd just like to know why in the world we're hiring more people and why we don't use some sort of computerized payroll that would make it so we didn't have to hire more people.
Thank you, Dan. David, do you want to talk to the solid waste, and then Patty, I'll ask you to address the SAU. And then David, it looked like you had some other comments to come back to. So actually, let's start with Patty on the SAU side of things, and then we can go to David.
I may need Amber's help with the percentage increase this year on the SAU budget. I don't have that in front of me, but the position that we're hiring is due to the resignation of a staff member. So we're not adding a position, that's filling an existing position. And we did actually talk about outsourcing payroll. The difficulty with our SAU is that that person, it's not just strictly a payroll processing position. He does a lot, or did, lots of other functions. He does our retirement reporting. He does approval of workshop funds for every teacher in the SAU. So there are lots of other jobs. If we outsourced payroll, it would leave a good portion of that position unfilled. So for that reason, we're still looking into it, but it will probably make more sense to go with someone that can fulfill all of those duties. And then Amber, do you have the SAU increase in front of you?
I do. It's 2.17%. And with that said, the majority of that increase has to do with health insurance in the New Hampshire retirement. The majority of the budget we made significant decreases in, or were able to keep flat. But because of the New Hampshire retirement rate went up, just that in itself, the increase was about $47,000. And then health insurance was approximately $20,000. When you have a budget of, that's 1.7 million, that's a pretty drastic increase in those areas, which can significantly create an increase in the budget.
Thanks, Amber. David, do you want to address solid waste? And then it looks like you might have had some other comment.
Sure. So the Solid Waste Committee is up and running again, and Jerry Fleury is also on that committee. Any committee we need to get, we put Jerry on it, no matter what. So Jerry's on there, and he'll be able to help out a little bit. But the committee is looking at any and all options right now. The reality is that the truck is needed right now. The contract, they're going to start looking at the negotiations on the contract, and hopefully looking at the fact of rolling in that if we purchase a new vehicle, we're going to roll that into the contract. If we were to go out and privatize it, that they would have to purchase that vehicle from us. So the problem right now is it takes a good 8 to 12 months to get a new vehicle in here. The one we have, the very first one, is almost unusable at this point in time. We'd have to put $30,000, $40,000 into that. And we're just beating the other one right now. And we've had both of them go down and break at the same time. And it's awful difficult. So we're looking at all options, and Jerry, he can pipe up and, explain any more, but everything's going to be looked at with the committee. The other thing that I just wanted to mention was I noticed that Matt's still on, where the road question is we're getting ready. It's going out to bid. That and crack sealing is going out to bid, and we're looking at having an open bid on February 25th. It's all going to come down to the cost of the paving, but we're looking at doing Hillcrest, Borough Road from North Pembroke Road to the Chichester line, and to do the top coat on Dudley Hill right now. If there's any funds left over, then they'll revisit what the other roads are that they might have, some smaller ones that they can mix and match some things. But those are the roads projected for 21.
Thanks, David. Jerry, do you want to jump in on the solid waste?
Yeah, I think David covered everything pretty carefully. Right now, the committee's been focusing on reviewing the ordinance to see whether there are any economies that can be picked up in that. One of the things that we came to realize is that the town's been doing some paperwork and carrying out some processes that were related to back when we used to haul trash to Pembroke, that might free up some labor in the Public Works Department if we can eliminate the filing of certain forms and whatnot, essentially getting us out of the solid waste licensing business with some of our commercial haulers. And then we've also looked at things like, what about the growth of the town? Right now, our vehicles are picking up trash 5 days a week with one spare day in case of holidays or snowstorms or what have you. So we've actually met with the haulers and asked them to consider whether or not they might pick up a particular route. So you don't have to, if it gets to the point that we have to add a second truck, we wouldn't have to do that. We could outsource part of the town as an economy. And then we may look at the entire issue of outsourcing, in which case, in putting out an RFP, which the committee intends to do, we might look at whether or not the bidder would be willing to purchase a truck if we had one that was only a year or two old. So the committee's trying to make sure that no stone is left unturned, but it was still early in the process.
Thank you, Jerry. Other questions or comments?
I just would like to thank everybody for their answers to my questions.
Sure. Thank you, Dan. Okay, I don't see any hands up, so perhaps this is a good time to see if anyone that's dialing in would have any questions. Andy, is there a particular, I believe *6 to unmute? So *6 on your phone if you're dialing in to unmute, and just speak up and and let us know who you are, and I'll recognize you, and we'll sort it out.
Hi, I'm Cindy Simic.
Hi, Cindy. What street are you on?
I'm sorry, Fourth Range Road.
Wonderful. Thank you. Please go right ahead.
I have two questions. The first one has to do with road maintenance, if it's in the plan. Recently, the San Ken development has gotten approved, and the concern is with all the construction and equipment that the road is already challenged, and the concern is what the town is going to be doing to handle their part of what is going to be involved with all the construction equipment that is on Fourth Range Road. Plus, there is on the books for a potential development on Beacon Hill, which is directly off of Fourth Range, and that could, in addition, cause additional impact on the roads of Fourth Range.
Thank you. So I'm not sure that there's going to be an answer for you this evening. This is really a bit outside the budget, the budget specifically. Unless there are some plans or there's some monies allocated in the budget for any of that, which I don't believe there are, but David can confirm. These questions otherwise are probably best addressed directly to the selectmen. But David, any comment?
Currently, there's nothing in the budget for any type of work up there. Ultimately, there was a project that was done a few years ago in Upper Beacon that was a bond issue. Actually, that's the bond issue that we're paying off right now, not Pembroke Hill. So the town waited until there was verification that the parcel of land up there that was recently purchased by conservation was up for a development too. And then the town did the project. So I'm sure the roads committee would look at the process after. If these developments did go in, they'd go out and they'd look at the road, they'd look and see what was there and what maintenance upgrades that would need to be taking place. But that wouldn't probably happen until after the entire project was done. So, but nothing in 2021 right now.
David, if she has further concerns, is it appropriate to address the selectmen or the roads committee?
She can address the Board of Selectmen, but there's a member on the Board of Selectmen that sits on the Roads Committee, and they would take that information to the roads to have that discussion ultimately.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I have another question.
Sure.
Is the town looking at the student enrollment, as there have been issues in the past, and now with the state putting forward a bill that would impact funds from the town that would go to individuals to have their children do schooling elsewhere, whether it's charter. We already know that it's covered under home, but charter, home, religious. And so how is the town prepared for that?
I don't know, Andy, do you want to tackle that one,
I think, Patty, do you mind?
or Patty?
I'm not sure I know how to tackle that. It's quite the controversy right now. It is proposed legislation, and there's really nothing that could be done at this point until we see how far it goes through. It's the very beginning stages, and the public hearings are just beginning. I don't know that that would affect our budget next year, but certainly could create some problems in the future if that were to move forward and people were able to take the tax dollars and go elsewhere for school.
So I've lived in this town for 32 years. So then the concern ends up being that recently went to a meeting where off of Beacon Hill, they're looking at putting in a development, whether they're talking it to be senior or trying to think of the right words for it, different income people. So now if you're looking at putting in a development where now you're going to be putting in people with challenged income, then how is that then going to impact then the school system and the budget? Because now you're talking more potential children into the town.
Hey, Mark, this is David. I can handle that a little bit.
Sure.
So the project that's proposed right now on Upper Beacon, it's age restricted income qualifying. So it's under the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, 62 and older. And there's age restrictions in there, and there cannot be any children whatsoever in that building.
Okay, so the meeting that I went to, I guess that wasn't really qualified, that I thought it was older, but also income challenged. So, okay, then you've clarified it for me that if it's going to be just 62 and older and not families with kids, then thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm done with my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else from the phone? All right. Any other comments or questions? Armand.
Just briefly discussing from the discussion what they're talking about, the state is considering vouchers, and the only tax impact it would have is instead of the town paying the 13,000, the state would pay anywhere from 3,500 to 8,500 to send a child to another school. And my understanding is like Catholic schools and other schools, we're somewhere around the $3,000 or $4,000 range. So the only difference would be making that instead of paying the 13,000 per child to go to Pembroke, the Pembroke would be only paying anywhere from 3,000 to 8,000. That's my understanding from what I read, anyways.
Clint, I see your hand up.
The state would take the 3,000 or 3,900 or whatever it is out of the adequacy grant and shift it to what amounts to a private school. That's the effect.
Okay. And again, this is proposed legislation. It's not hashed out yet, so we don't know what the future is gonna hold here. One more time, other questions or comments? Andy.
I was going to try not to comment again, but I just wanted to throw in a quick note of gratitude to the Municipal Budget Committee. I think that the school board and the Municipal Budget Committee worked well together this year. Meetings were cordial. I think information was provided on time. Feedback was provided timely also. I think the whole process went pretty smoothly. Wasn't easy. We were asked by the budget committee to make some cuts. We came back with a significant $500,000 or more, bringing down our number. And I'm just very happy that we worked together and that we're able to bring numbers to the public that were supported by both the board and the budget committee. I think that's great. So thanks, everyone.
And on behalf of the Budget Committee, I would like to thank the administrators and the other boards as well. This is a difficult process in the best of times. We have some extra challenges here. We had some, organizational challenges, including this meeting here, which seems to have gone fairly well and smoothly. But I very much appreciate all the work of the administrators and the boards and the staffs that support them. And all the department chairs and the principals and everybody else. So thank you. And with that, since there does not appear to be any further questions, I will proceed to close the public hearing.
Mark, I see Tom Seraphin raising his hand.
I'm sorry, I'm looking in the list. I'm looking for people to use the raise your hand, so I can't always see you. So Tom, go right ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. The button wasn't working. Just some feedback in terms of information presented tonight. I think it's pretty confusing, given that the school with the COVID year and the potential significant surplus didn't really review a lot of the cuts that were made. So I don't have any suggestions or solutions, but just for a school district meeting, hopefully we can add some detail and bring a little more transparency to that. I am guessing that people will find that a little confusing. And in terms of the increase from year to year, especially because it's a COVID year, I think it'd be great to see us show the increase not just from last year, but from the last 2 years, just because this past year was so different for the school. I think we're just going to confuse people if we show a massive decrease in, say, school food service funding, and then a significant expected increase in revenue when it's all explained by, lack of students not being in school. So, frankly, on a personal note, while I appreciate the percentage from this year and last year is small, when you look at the tax increase dollars, I still think that is awfully substantial ask in a year that we have a lot of people in this community that are working in industries that were absolutely affected by COVID and still affected by COVID. Restaurants and in the area. So again, no one else has said anything along those lines, and I just wanted to make sure that was shared. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I don't see any hands up in videos. I don't see any hands up on the side window. So with that, I will now close the public hearing. So again, I want to thank everybody for participating. Thank you for joining us. We're going to